This is Groove Talk with Froggy Style.
Welcome to another episode of Groove Talk, everybody. On this episode, I am joined virtually by Mikahla, and she is the driving force behind the band Future Womb.
Woo, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you for being on the show again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I guess just for those who maybe don't know, could you maybe give a little bit of background information on yourself and on Future Womb?
Ooh, okay. I'll start with Future Womb. So Future Womb is, oh dear, a psychedelic darkwave Popera project originating out of Calgary. It's myself, Mikaela Cochrane, and then on bass is Michael D'Souza, on drums is Andrew Ellergott, and on guitar is Jordan Moe. We just been together, I guess, since 2017, and we've just released one album, Galactic, which was in 2019, so it's coming up on 2 years since that release. We like to look really pretty on stage and wear cute makeup and cool outfits, but obviously that's not a thing right now. But then for myself, I guess I'm a multidisciplinary artist, so I have most of my training in acting, so theater acting and film, which is why I have now recently relocated to Vancouver to pursue the whole film thing, which is happily starting back up now in this stage of the pandemic. So hopefully that's still a possible dream. And otherwise, I don't know, I'm a Virgo, Aries moon, Taurus rising. Yeah, that's all I can think of for me in this moment.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, so I think the last time we talked was either late 2018 or very early 2019, I think. So it's been almost 2 years since we've talked, too. And Baby Girl Galactic hadn't even come out yet.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, when I was talking to you the first time, it was kind of like, it was kind of when I was first kind of really coming into my own as a podcaster as well. And I felt like you were maybe kind of doing that as a musician at the same time. So it was a very interesting dynamic. And then we're talking so many years later, and I think we're like maybe more established, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I guess just in that time, I know you mentioned, that you guys released Baby Girl Galactic, but what else have you been up to?
Yeah, actually, I before I answer your question, I just was thinking like, yeah, I think you were my first ever interview of any variety as a musician, and it was like a really nice experience. I'm really stoked to be back here.
Awesome.
But yeah, what's happened since then? Jeez. We played around Alberta a bunch. We played a bunch of festivals. We got the opportunity to play Sled Island, which was really cool. I think when we chatted, it was right before Big Winter Classic that year, so we got to play Big a couple times, and Frog Fest and Femwave and stuff. So those were all really, really cool opportunities. Festivals are just so much fun to play. And then, yeah, the album release, which was such a labor of love because Taylor, my sibling, produced it, and them and I just spent like 2 solid years chipping away at that. And that's where I've started to try and learn about production kind of on my own here as well, after being inspired by watching that process. But then the release of Baby Girl Galactic, trying really hard to do it as like professionally, from the like looking as legit as possible, it was a huge learning curve for myself. And then keeping up all the social media stuff was so much work. But then, yeah, I guess I moved out to Vancouver in the late summer, fall of 2019. And since then, it's been pretty quiet for us. I came back that January to play Big, which was the last Big before the pandemic. So we had a little reunion then, and it was like, it was just such a fun show because I think having moved, it gave me kind of a more of a moment to like check in with myself, and my own confidence got pretty shook from the removal of community, and then coming back and being in an environment that was like, oh yeah, people like give a shit and enjoy like what I have to offer, and like I still can collaborate with my friends and all that. It was like this very much needed little boost. But then, yeah, since then it's been just isolation vibes. We're sort of trial and error figuring out how to collaborate long distance. I'm like a baby producer, so there's that level of the learning curve, as well as just trying to figure out how everyone's processes work in this new world. But yeah, I think that's pretty much where we're at. I have a ton of songs that I want to do stuff with, but it's such a longer process without that in-person jamming experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure everything takes like 3 times as long to do anything, right?
Oh my gosh, like 300 times as long.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
There's no like impulsive in the moment things. Everything's got to be like planned, and then hopefully inspiration strikes at the time that you press record, you know?
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I imagine that can be, very difficult. Like how did the first like album kind of come together? Was it like you guys just getting into a room and jamming, and that's like the result of that? I
guess, yeah. Like we just were, I would bring like, what I thought was like my finished product, what I could do on my own, kind of to the group. And then I would just be like, hello, I have a new song today. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And then I'd be like, I will perform it now. And then I would do that. And then they would kind of start noodling things. And then we would just play like a segment of however many bars of music just over and over and over and over again, and just jam it until it sounded cool, and record it and point back at parts and be like, that was cool, and then try and do it again and come up with something different. And eventually, just by repetition, some things would stick, and then that just would become the song. So yeah,
okay, a
lot of in-person, in the moment kind of creative processes.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I imagine that makes kind of creating music in this different way a little bit more challenging, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We have and like so much time has passed since we've been in that place of creating new content. Oh God, I have been on social media, new songs. So yeah, there's a lot of like just kind of finding our sea legs. Is that the right metaphor? Like right now. So yeah, it's going to be worth it. I know it's going to be worth it, but it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like I'm very excited to even hear that you guys are like, you're working on new music. That's exciting for me. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been saying we've been working on new music just to like to myself for like the last 2 years. And the progress is so slow that it's nice to like tell someone that it's happening, because it gives me that like little boost of it being like a new exciting thing again, and being like, yeah, this is cool. Okay, let's like keep going, because oh God, yeah, the journey.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine. I mean, when Baby Girl Galactic came out, it was I don't know. When I heard it for the first time, I remember I contacted you because I knew it was coming out, and I wanted to do like a review on it or whatever. I just remember hearing it for the first time, and it was so different from anything that I had heard before in like the best way possible. Like, and it kind of even it's not a type of music that I more traditionally found myself being attracted to, but with Baby Girl Galactic, there was just a couple of songs on there that really drew me in, that were just like so kind of like psychedelic and like poppy, but like different and progressive, and it's just like it was so neat just to hear. So I guess what kind of feedback have you guys had on Baby Girl Galactic?
Ooh, good question. Well, yours has been very nice to hear. I think like there has been a lot of people have pointed out just kind of the mishmash of a variety of different styles, or like references to styles, I guess. And the journey of the album itself being quite like a variety of things, just like the wild ride of it. And that, it's for everyone especially at the live shows, comments on just how fun it is, which is nice to hear, because I mean, we have so much fun, so it's nice to know everyone else is also having fun. But yeah, I think, and then, like in my Instagram DMs, I do get like folks who will kind of comment or send, I guess, like a thank you for some of the material that we're covering, like lyrically, and I guess for also how straightforward I am about my own struggles on stage, just in my like in between song banter, which is like so rewarding, because that's the stuff that I feel is the most self-serving for me when I'm doing that. I'm like, this is the part that really feels like, it's for me. And so to have it benefit someone else is such a like unexpected gift.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of like the dream, is someone says like your art touched me and like made me feel less alone. Like that's the big goal. So there's been definitely moments of that, and those little moments, just like I'll like go look at those DMs when I'm feeling down and be like, oh, I contributed to the world. Like I'm not just this like selfish, self-involved, narcissistic actor who tried to do music. Like it's very nice.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I do the same thing when people say nice things about the podcast. So
yeah.
Yeah, I go back and look at them. I'm like, I at least reached somebody, like.
Yeah, those like, if like to the listeners, if you ever feel like you want to thank someone for something that they put out there, do it, because like that is just the best thing. It just keeps people going, especially right now.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like some people maybe are hesitant because they're like, oh, I don't want to bother them, or I'm sure they get thousands of messages or so many messages or whatever, but it's like, well, every message is awesome. Like I love getting messages, and I'm sure you do too. Like
absolutely.
So you did touch on it a little bit, like the lyrical kind of content and the message behind this album it's a little bit more like real and kind of raw. So when you set out to create these songs, was there always kind of like, did you want to kind of convey that message with your music, or is that just kind of what came out when you were creating?
I think it's just kind of what came out. I mean, I feel like actually, I guess there was a bit of a filter of like wanting it to be just vague enough that it's accessible, and like the emotional elements that people can connect to are the core of it, and that it's not just like one day on November 15th, this is what happened. Like, I didn't want it to be so much a diary entry. So there definitely was a little bit of a filter of like, okay, like I want this to be something that could be applied to multiple situations, not just like romantic relationships or like interpersonal struggles. Like hopefully there is more layers to that emotional journey and other applications as well.
And I mean, even just, you listening through the album and stuff, it's kind of like an emotional roller coaster ride. Like there's parts in it that like, bring you up and you're high and you're like, woo. And then there's parts that kind of bring you right back down and you're like, it makes you think, And I found that what you guys did a really good job of is, I guess, kind of conveying that emotion through your music.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the ultimate goal. So that's really great to hear.
Yeah. And I know that this might just I'm sure this podcast just kind of sounds like the Future Room fan podcast by Cody Smith right now, but yeah, I'm sure, but it's just like it's like I said, it's when I heard your album for the first time, it was something that just so different, and it just was it like really blew my mind at the time. And when you guys were releasing it and stuff, and you guys went online, you guys went to CJSW to like play a few songs live or whatever, and my girlfriend, who I just started seeing at that time, she was like over or something. I was like, okay, yeah, you can stay over and stuff, but also we have to be up at like 10 a.m. because I really want to listen to this.
Gosh, that's lovely.
And she was like, okay, yeah, no, that's cool. And we woke up and we turned on CJSW and we just kind of listened. And I was like, yeah, this is the first time I ever done that. So
oh my gosh, that warmed my heart so much. Yeah, that was a pretty wild way to start off that day, because that was the album release day. Was like, okay, first thing in the morning of like the night you will perform your whole album for the first time to people who can then look it up online later that night. Let's perform another set in the morning when you're not even awake yet.
Yeah.
And oh man, that day was so wild. But that was the best. Oh, I'm so glad you listened in.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Yeah, definitely was there for it. You mentioned that you were into, theater and, movies and acting and stuff like that. And I feel like maybe kind of that like vibe or that aspect really comes out on your guys' kind of stage performance.
Oh, good.
Is that something that was like consciously kind of, paid attention to, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as an actor, I always have struggled with like my speaking voice not like projecting, or like it kind of is like in my throat, or like sounds like I'm like choking or whatever. Like there's always been in theater school, it was always like, oh, you sound like blocked, like what is going on there. But then whenever I would sing, it wasn't like a problem. Like I've always been like I have infinite breath control when singing, but then when speaking it just gets so like nervous and anxious and like trapped. And so I feel so much freer to like express emotion when singing. So I think that like a lot of emotions that I'd be like holding, not necessarily, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, just like throughout the day, because I wasn't feeling like able to communicate it would come out through singing. And because the time period that we were performing a lot and recording was just such a like emotionally fraught period of my life, there just was always this like endless well of emotion to draw upon. And so like that's kind of what I've in retrospect attributed it to, and also just why like my vocal style during that time was so like wanting to like so projecting and like putting as much air behind like each note as possible and wanting notes to like last as long as possible and doing like runs and stuff, because it was just like there's so much here that I need out. If that makes sense. Yeah,
no, for sure. I also kind of like, even in the, you know, the visual aspect of your guys' live performance, it seems almost theatrical in a way, you know, with the makeup and with the costumes and stuff like that. And like the whole aesthetic just kind of like really comes together. And, you know, once you start singing, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, if that makes sense. But
yeah, the aesthetic was like the aesthetic element. Well, I mean, super inspired by burlesque, which is highly theatrical. And like the most like you just want it to be as like as much, well, at least for me, my burlesque style is so much like, okay, what else can I bedazzle? Like what can I add to this to make it more drama and like more show business kind of thing? Like how can, yeah. And so that mentality would be applied to whatever our stage looks were. And a lot of the time I would try and kind of tailor my makeup look to how I felt, who I felt like I was in that moment, and not necessarily in like a complimentary way either. Like I remember there was a show that I was, I'd had a breakup and I was feeling really like, just like I was some sort of like cretin of the earth. Like I just hated myself in that moment, and I had a lot of shame and anger. And so then I created this like makeup look that had like almost a look of sores or like a flesh-eating disease or something. I just wanted to look kind of grotesque, but like make it fashion. And it was, I think I got definitely a couple like, moments from people, but it just was, it felt like the most authentic way to be presenting myself in that moment. And it made me feel like I could be confidently and authentically on stage. And it was it's like one of my favorite looks still.
Awesome. So it's kind of like more taking those like inner feelings and projecting them outward onto the crowd almost. Totally.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I still don't know if I would consider, I don't, okay. So I feel like my persona that I've done for Future Room, because the like makeup looks and the expressing what's on the inside and putting it out, like since that has been such an intentional thing, I do kind of feel like I'm in drag when I'm performing, and that person that I am on stage, that like persona that I've cultivated, who like I feel like my voice is always like, it's kind of up here and it's like really cute and I'm like, hi guys, like that whole version of who I was, like the baby girl galactic Mikahla, felt like a drag persona that I could put on, and then she was like the badass rock and roll queen that I did not feel like in my everyday life, and like that person like protected me in those situations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. I think we can all kind of maybe even empathize with that a little bit, right? I think at least any creative person who kind of puts themselves out there, right? You know, I think we all kind of have those personas that we have to drop into to kind of get the work done, get the job done, or give the best performance possible, right?
Totally. Yeah. And like, I like recently I've learned that I am on the autism spectrum, and as I'm learning more about what that means for me, I've learned more about what like masking is. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but to the listeners, this like putting on, I guess not putting on, but like mimicking or just being as like appropriate for the social circumstance as possible based on like careful observations, how like other people are performing, well, not performing, just existing, but like, and then myself kind of performing the appropriate persona to fit into that situation. And then like as an actor, I guess like honing that craft my whole life, being able to use it as like a career piece. And then again, in performing music, being able to tap into the ways that I know I can convey the feeling to the masses, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope that was a cohesive thought.
Again, I can empathize with what you just said there. And I don't know, I feel kind of very similar in social situations, I guess, is, you know, you kind of read the room and you just kind of fall into, exactly what you said, like whatever is appropriate in that situation. And for me personally, I've found that I mean, it makes me definitely more like agreeable in social situations, but it also kind of puts me sometimes into social situations where I'm like, I'm agreeable in this situation, but I don't agree with anything that's being said in this situation. Do you know what I mean? Like,
totally. It's like a survival thing. You're just like, yeah, totally. Fuck, get me out of here.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah. I totally feel that. It's just like I am performing for everyone but me now.
Yeah. And then you're sitting there and you're like, I cannot wait to leave this group of people or situation or whatever. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It's like this great disservice to yourself, but it feels still like it's like the expectation.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, you know, your kind of looks on stage are very heavily influenced by like burlesque and stuff like that. And you just recently released a music video for the single TGIF. And for those who haven't seen it, it's available now everywhere or on YouTube or wherever you listen to videos, I'm sure. So, and it's very burlesque focused. So I guess, can you just kind of take us through how that video kind of came together and like what the inspiration behind it was and stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah. So the performer in the video is a friend of mine, Jezebel Sinclair. And when I originally was coming up with like the big dreams I had around the album release, I was really wanting there to be like a live band burlesque show for the album release. Even like I literally only just remembered this now. But like my dream was that I would be able to get the grant money to pay these performers to make up a routine, and I had like this list of performers who were integral in my development as a burlesque artist, because my burlesque art form was, I think, like a prerequisite that was very necessary for me to be comfortable doing music. I was a lot more comfortable with communicating with movement before I could communicate with voice. And so Jezebel Sinclair was one of those performers that I had on my list as like they absolutely must be a part of this. And then I heard word that Jezebel was going to be moving out of town, and I was like, oh, that makes things more complicated. Like she might not be here for that day. And then also at this point, like I did not get the grant, spoiler alert. But so I was like, okay, how do I do this, but smaller? And I had met Tesh Gudakonda on the set of this film Jonesin, which I had done in Calgary in the fall before the album release. And he was really wanting to do some music videos, and I guess I was probably just talking about my band on set. And so he offered to work collaboratively together to do that. And then Shay Patterson was the cinematographer. He was also around there, and we just all coordinated schedules with like a week of notice, because everyone was leaving town like all at once. We coordinated all our schedules and just got together in my apartment and filled it with a fog and like put up a couple of lights and just went for it. And like Jezebel had had created the choreography and her concept for the routine before shooting day, but in like quite a short, like it was a very demanding request to have something of that nature be created that quickly. But she did it and she nailed it. And we got it in just a couple takes, I think if memory serves me, just within a few hours. And then it was just the 2 years after where I didn't know when you release it.
Yeah. So I guess, why did you, I know you kind of touched on it when we chatted through email, but I guess why did you take that amount of time to release this video?
I honestly don't know if it was that intentional. It kind of was like the album release lead up was just so much going on that I just ran out of time and didn't release the music video in time, because I was hoping originally for the music video to promote the album, because TGIF was the like third single, but then when that wasn't in the cards, I was trying to think of like what's the best way to use this material, because videos get like algorithms love videos, so I was like, I gotta use this in the smartest way possible, and so I was like, okay, well, we'll use it to promote a tour. That'll be the thing. I've never toured. I didn't know how much work that would be to make that happen, and then shortly after the festival circuit, after the album release, I moved to Vancouver. And again, it was just like I lost track of time. Moving provinces is not a small thing, especially not for me. Like having my routine and environments shift so dramatically, it like truly fucked me up. And by the time I started to kind of find my footing, it was pandemic times. And then I was like, oh, shoot. So this is only going to be a month, right? So I'll just hold on to this video. And then it was just not the right time to be releasing content. It still, like, to be honest, doesn't necessarily feel like the right time. But it just got to a point where I was like, I have this beautiful piece of art, and these wonderful human beings gave me their time and their creative energy to create this thing, and I'm just hoarding it. And it felt wrong to not share that with the world, especially as like 2 years have passed. So people's art has evolved from this, and you want stuff to be current out there that's representing you as an artist. So it mostly was like, this is just, it's not right to not release it. But then when I was thinking about releasing it, I was like, honestly, the themes in this song are like really resonant for me right now. And this idea of like literally just being alone in an apartment as like the context of the video, and that like feeling of connecting with someone through a screen, like it just felt so poignant for now. And so many of the emotions, like thematically, it's not a song written in isolation, but like a lot of those feelings of like frustration and like anger just felt like they were something someone would connect with right now. And so I was like, maybe like I know it's been 2 years since this album has been out, but maybe like this song can have another life in this new context. So yeah, and then eventually I just like sent the email out to you being like, hello, it's happening. And then at that point I was like, okay, I've given myself a deadline. Like, it's happening now. Like and then all of a sudden it did. And I was like, ah. I was like, oh no, I don't have a video that I can release in the future. What am I going to do now?
I guess you'll just have to make more videos.
I guess so.
But yeah, I feel like the release of the video, at least the way that I interpret kind of the message behind the video, you know, and it being about kind of forgiveness and, you know, moving on a little bit. And I think that was like a very important message to get across after almost a year of isolation for most people, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that a little bit more people, I don't know. People have treated this pandemic so differently. Like some people have just fallen apart completely. No motivation, no anything. And then some people have thrived in it. But at least for me, I'm on the former other than the latter. I kind of fell apart and didn't have any motivation, and it was really a little bit of a struggle. So like your video to me kind of almost represented like the end of that, and, you know, being kind to myself for not being productive, like through a pandemic and stuff like that. So like that message of forgiveness, at least, was very poignant for myself. And I hope it was for a lot of other people as well.
Oh, that's really beautiful to hear. I'm like welling up. Because yeah, like honestly, okay, this is gonna sound like I'm going off topic, but I'm not. I promise. I'll bring it back. Yeah. I was listening to a Broken Record podcast interview with Bruce Springsteen, and he was talking about how like your subconscious is where well, at least he was like, I write from my subconscious, and a lot of the time I find that what I write is like way ahead of my conscious mind. And so I'll write a song, and then like a year later, that's when I actually need to hear it. I don't know if he said it like that, but that like hearing him say that and then myself listening to this, I was like, God, I was so wise. Like, I knew some stuff and then I forgot it. Or like I knew it, but not in like in my bones kind of way. Like I intellectually understood some ideas, but I wasn't applying them. And that was kind of the way I was approaching songwriting at the time, but I'd forgotten that. Like the name Future Womb being like, I'm trying to set these things down and grow who I want to be. Like I'm trying to develop as a human being and improve myself through this art form. And so now listening, like even like I brought up the lyrics right before coming online here and was reading through it, and I was just like, damn, like literally the lessons that I'm trying to hammer into my brain, like today, last night, like they're there in that song. And that's been such a both frustrating and like kind of cool thing. So I'm like, okay, you just gotta like keep on going. Like you're doing a good job, or at least a good enough job, like that. Like those like comforting lyrics, and then like, okay, but like also you're gonna have to do some work here.
Yeah.
And so that's been cool to kind of feel like I'm taking care of myself. Like, thanks, past Mikaela. Hopefully future Mikaela can learn some shit from what I'm writing right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Just complete side note, Broken Record podcast is awesome.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's so good.
I was only newly introduced to it.
Yeah.
And I was running out of music podcasts or not running out of, but like, you listen to them all on the day they come out and you're like, more, please.
Yeah.
So I was like, thank God it's like an hour long. I can make this last.
Yeah. Great. They do a great job there. And it's really awesome to hear it's kind of like this podcast, but with like, famous people,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really cool. But I like what you said there, though, about kind of like writing from your subconscious a little bit, because I feel like a lot of the best art and the art that kind of carries maybe more of a message behind it is usually that, it's something that you're writing, but you're not like almost aware that you're even kind of writing it at the time. At least that's kind of how I feel about it. Or you're like, you finish writing it and you're like, where did that even come from? Like, that's yeah. But I like what you said there about writing from your subconscious, because there's times even in my life when I'm like writing a short story or anything like that, and it's like once you get flowing and it just starts coming out, and then you look back and you read it and you're like, that was very powerful, but I don't know where that came from. Like,
yeah. Like, how did I just like puke out a fully formed idea like that? Like, yeah, not having to be like, okay, so the exposition is thus like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. It's like, okay, I've still got it. Like,
yeah. So I guess I'm kind of interested on, you said you were kind of working on music and you have a ton of songs written and stuff like that. So I guess what does I guess the evolution of kind of Future Womb look like? What are the songs that you're working on now? Are they very similar to past songs, or are they like completely different, or?
What is the evolution? This is a good question. I'm just gonna, I have so many documents up on my desktop right now, like just in case you ask a question that I'm like, oh, what do I need to reference for that? So luckily I have pulled up the titles of all the tracks that I've got working, or that I'm working on right now. I think there's like 20 things here, but there's a bit of similar content, like grieving the things that I guess left behind in Calgary as well. There's some songs that I wrote before Baby Girl Galactic that are coming up again and feeling relevant again. I guess like I'm always at least somewhat in the like healing / self-improvement, grieving headspace when I'm writing. It's very rare that I write a song that's like, yeah, I've arrived. But there are a couple of those, honestly. Like I allow myself some joy from time to time, and that's been one of my, I guess, self lessons, is to also sit in those emotions and let that be comfortable as much as I sit in the negative ones. And I think a lot of the songs that I've been writing more recently are a bit like sassier. I don't know what that's all about, but maybe some confidence coming back. But maybe not as much rage, which is maybe a good thing. Maybe that's a sign of growth, and more like detached reflection and learnings and stuff. I don't know, though. There's now I'm looking at some other ones like, no, that one's pretty mad. But I guess like I did mention my autism diagnosis earlier, which honestly this is like the first time I've mentioned it in any sort of like official recorded way. But that has played a huge part in how I view the world. And so it's not necessarily a topic that I'm like explicitly writing about, but I can just see based on the songs that I've written, like I know that that's been weighing heavy on my mind. And just because like a songwriting is me saying how I see the world and then becoming hyper self-critical about how my senses perceive the world, and then trying to, I guess, communicate that in a way that I think maybe neurotypical folks will be able to understand me, and then like being like, oh, maybe they won't. Like that whole journey in there it's definitely there. There are a couple songs that are like explicitly about that feeling. Actually, the song Hell, there's a live recording of our performance at Frogfest in 2019 that I was like fresh song I'd written like a week earlier that I requested to play for the crowd, and I like cry through the whole recording. My voice kind of sounds like this in the while I'm singing, and it, like, I guess if someone wanted reference to like where I think I maybe am going, I don't know, now that I've said that I'm like, that's too committed, but that song kind of was exploring those ideas. Mm-hmm. And then in performing it, I had so many people come up afterwards and be like, by the way, like, I feel that way too. And then that was like, oh, okay. I thought this was my special, unique perspective, but that is nice to not be alone, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It's kind of the interesting thing that you touched on a little bit there is, you know, we all kind of perceive the world differently, right? And mm-hmm. The only way that we can communicate how we perceive the world is either by, like, you know, through our words or through our art or through something. And it's surprising when you find out other people do feel the same way that you do. Like, you know, mm-hmm. when that person came up and said, or those people came up and said, you know, I feel that way too. I think that it just kind of makes us feel less alone, because we think our experience is so unique and so unique to us and nobody else is going to feel it this way or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, when you get those comments, it's like very reassuring and comforting, and just like, I don't know, at least for me personally, it kind of makes life a little bit more manageable, might be the right word.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's the same as those like Instagram DMs or like comments on your podcast. Like, it's those little moments that kind of like bring you back to earth. And you're like, right, like, I am a part of like a species. And if someone were to like zoom out, a lot of our problems would break down to like the same elements, and like, we really do have quite a bit in common. And it almost is like this self-indulgent thing to think like my problems are mine alone and I'm the only one who could ever like relate to me. And it feels like self-serving until it's broken. And you're like, oh, right. Like, I don't have to like suffer.
Yeah.
It's not my identity to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And I think, you know, it's easy to feel alone in this world, especially now where we're all isolated mm-hmm. and we can't gather with our friends, our communities, our families even. Mm-hmm. So it's really easy to feel alone. So, you know, when people are making, you know, good art or good content or whatever it may be that helps to bring people together and make them feel less alone, that's like an overall win for humanity, I would say, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, like in the ways we can be together, it's nice to still have like, yeah, art and content.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, my mind has also been what's the word? Jesus. Hijacked a little bit by social media, I guess. You know, you have to think of everything as content or... Yeah,
you're like, your life is, or at least your life for other people is online.
Yeah.
And it's such a, yeah, it's almost like a step on, like, past that whole performing in a room that you, like, don't really want to be in. It's like you're like having to create the content to perform who you are in this reality that is sucky right now. It's like, okay, I guess I'll play along and I'll do the thing. Yeah, but like still, yeah, it's like I'll resent a Zoom meeting with like friends, and then I'll do it and I'll feel better.
Yeah. No, same here.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Like it's so hard to get us together on a Zoom meeting just for like an hour to just have a conversation. And I'll be dreading it, and I'll be like, oh, do I really want to do this? It's so easy to flake out, it's because it's just a Zoom meeting, but then you do it and you're like, wow, I needed that so badly.
Yeah. It's like that sliver of social interaction is actually like going to sustain me for another week.
Yeah.
Huzzah.
Yeah, exactly. So just curious, I guess, when you do kind of decide to start compiling the next album or the next piece of music, I guess what lessons did you learn from making Baby Girl Galactic that you would take and apply to this next piece of art?
Yes. Did I learn anything? I guess I learned from Taylor just how much play and like in the moment play and like in the recording space, how much that can change the song and like elevate the song if you want it to. And I still don't understand like 99% of what producing can be. But now that I'm like starting to chip away at that, which was started in that Baby Girl Galactic process, like I am seeing the art of producing, and like I think I had an idea of it before, like I but not to the depth that I feel like I'm starting to understand it, and like allowing that to play more of a role and not being like I mean if you listen to the album and then you see a live performance of the songs from Baby Girl Galactic, they are two different things, and I guess like I was a little bit scared to let that be too different, because like, well, one, I want to honor the things that me and my bandmates have created together, but now that we're not able to, like jam in person and all that, I want to see what that can be. Like I want to, I guess, push that, I think. I don't know. And in other parts, I'm like, maybe I just want to do it as like spare as possible. But just like, I guess allowing the, or maybe not even just allowing, but like being aware of the role of the producer, and more. Because that's something that I learned very much, like crash course through Baby Girl Galactic. Just seeing how much Taylor elevated that album and made it what it is was so inspiring. And now I'm like, okay, but I want to try. Also, I guess not trying to. Well, okay, this is a lesson that I haven't applied yet. So this is like one of those subconscious lessons that maybe in 2 years I'll apply. But not trying to do absolutely everything myself. Because I learned that I can do everything myself, but that I don't, that it like at what cost for my mental health. Like, I was in a unique circumstance that somehow I had the energy and the motivation, and maybe it's like just the first album adrenaline or something, to just be like the control lady who did it all, which was like cool to prove to myself that I had that abilities. But now I'm like, okay, but like what about like not putting yourself through that incredibly taxing, stressful thing, and like just relinquishing a bit of control and like trusting that other people can also do it.
Yeah.
And just as well, just maybe not exactly how you want.
Yeah. Is it hard to kind of give up that control when it revolves around kind of like your creative vision?
Totally. Yeah, definitely. And like in some ways I don't want to give up a lot of the things, but when at Future Mikahla, when there's a place to relinquish control that won't sacrifice your artistic vision, do it. Yeah, it's tempting to just do it all.
Yeah. Especially in like kind of today's day and age when you kind of have the tools to just do it all yourself, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's something that, you know, I definitely had to learn as well, because most of this is just done all by me. But I was putting too much pressure, too much expectations, too much stress on myself. And personally, I just had to take kind of a step back and be like, okay, just, you know, again, it's just that kind of be kind to yourself, forgive yourself when you don't meet deadlines, or, you know, when, you know, you don't do things exactly the way that you think that they should be done, you know? And again, that was just a really kind of important thing for me personally to learn. So I can kind of, again, empathize with that relinquishing control aspect of things.
Yeah. Actually, like what you just said, it's like if I'm going to do it all on my own, I can't set this expectation for myself to perform at the same level that like a team would perform at. Like, it's just not realistic. Mm-hmm. I am not 5 people.
Yeah. I think it's hard though too, because, you know, it's really hard not to compare yourself to other people, especially in the day of the age of social media, right? So you see, you know, maybe some of your favorites, like for me, it's podcasters. For you, it might be, you know, other bands or actors or whatever it may be. It's really hard not to look at people you kind of look up to and be like, why am I not doing stuff like that or whatever? Like, totally. I should be doing it this way. But then you realize that, like you said, they have a team behind them of 5 or so people that is helping them along, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard not to be so hard on yourself. Yeah. No, for sure. So I guess, is there any just kind of final things you want to throw out there before we close this out, or? I miss everyone. That feels like something I need to say. I miss Calgary a ton. I don't know. I as far as Future Womb news, I guess like watch the music video. Check out Jezebel Sinclair's Instagram. Check out Shea Patterson's website. Keep an eye on what Tesh is doing. Like these artists that I've collaborated with, I feel very lucky that they were down, because they are doing some really, really cool stuff. And I think that, like, I hope that if someone is coming to the music video because, like, they know me or they know Future Womb, that they'll be inspired to also follow these other artists, because their careers and their art forms are just going to expand and be amazing. And this is a great time to start following them. Awesome. Yeah, and I'll have all that, all those links and all that information in the episode notes. But yes, thank you very much for coming on the podcast again. It was awesome to catch up. Thank you so much for having me again. This was so nice. You're going to see me. You're going to acknowledge my agony. I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to love you still, yeah. Now that I see you're a person, no longer a vision, I will not minimize the good so the bad can seem more bigger. The presence of discomfort cannot
If you like this episode of Groove Talk, why not leave a review? You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Help us break through those evil algorithms and reach the most amount of glorious listeners that we possibly can. For up-to-date information on the show, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can find us at Froggy Style Productions. For more ways to support the show, visit fsproductions.ca.